Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Trump Trolls Trump. This is one of my favorite things. This is a show where somebody with the last name Trump makes fun of somebody who also has the same last name, who really needs to stop using it, you imposter. I'm not going to tell you, though. You'll have to guess who's making fun of whom. It's a mystery. Anyway, I'm going to let you guys decide. Here's a hint. We are taking a look back at week 9 of the new Trump regime. And I know that's higher than Donald can count. So, but even so, it's a very small number, 9. Like it's the kind of number you can learn on Sesame Street, for example. Unless they get rid of the count, in which case I'm not entirely sure what we'll do. But it's really not a lot of time. 9 weeks. I know. Okay, this Donald is we're. I'm going to lose him completely here. What's 9 times 7? Yeah, he doesn't know. It's 63 days. It seems so much longer than that, though, doesn't it? And you know what's making the time go even more slowly? Just how fucking stupid these people are. Now, obviously, we know that Donald kicked this off, at least in the context of the last few weeks, by renaming. Like I say, I put that in quotes because he has no power to rename a body of water that is globally understood to be the Gulf of Mexico. But, you know, in his own little head, he has the authority to rename it the Gulf of America. Now, obviously, that was stupid. But we have a new contender for who could do the stupidest thing in the Trump regime. I mean, it's stiff competition, don't get me wrong. But here's Colorado's 4th congressional district finest, and I say finest because also only Representative Lauren Boebert, and her thoughts about renaming the District of Columbia.
The chair now recognizes Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes of question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would caution my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to refrain from making fun of the Gulf of America, because next up, may end up be the District of America that we're working on. So just, keep the jokes at bay, and, maybe we'll just stick with the Gulf of America for now.
Why? Why keep the jokes at bay? It's the only thing keeping us alive. Jesus Christ. The District of America. Obviously, she doesn't understand why Washington, D.C., Washington District of Columbia was named what it was. Washington, I think that should be obvious to even ahistorical idiots like her. George Washington, our first president, one of our founding fathers, if you will. But the District of Columbia, what is that? What does Columbia sound like? Like, who has a name that's similar to Columbia? This country? Maybe it's that. Maybe we named the District Columbia after the South American country, Colombia. Except there's a problem. And, not somebody who can't spell would recognize the problem, but it's spelled differently. So it has to be Christopher Columbus. And honestly, I would be totally cool with not having anything named after Christopher Columbus because he was a genocidal maniac. So I'm down with that. And maybe Columbia University should change it. Actually, you know what? No, I think it's perfectly fitting that the traitorous Columbia University, who caved in such a cowardly fashion to Donald of all people, I think they should be named after a genocidal maniac. So there. Anyway, speaking of having a hard time with names, I want you to watch here as Donald tries to give House Majority Leader Steve Scalise a shout out and winds up calling him Skeeve. I think that's appropriate because Steve Scalise, after all, is a quite awful human being. And wait a sec. Oh my God, we have breaking news. Okay, so Donald called Steve Scalise Skeeve. And I just heard that Steve Scalise has just submitted papers to change his name legally just to make Donald feel better. So Donald doesn't think he actually made a mistake. Not that Donald ever thinks he makes a mistake. So it's going to be official soon. We're going to see it published in a newspaper. Steve Scalise's name will soon officially be Skeeve. I think he should just go by that one name. Watch this.
Doing all right, Skeeve. I tell you, he went through a lot, and he's stronger than ever.
Good for you, little guy. You actually answered to Skeeve. No wonder you want to change your name legally because, As I said, we can't have Donald all sad about it. I'm kind of hoping though that we learn that people now call you Stevie, because I think when you do change your name to Skeeve, that'll work really well for you because you're such a little worm. Now, before we dive in further, please hit like, share this video, and subscribe to our channel because we're really trying to grow, and we're pushing for, I should say, 400,000 subscribers. And every little bit helps. As independent media, your support helps us reach more people so we can grow this together. Okay, so the big story of the week is, of course, the Signal Group War Plans chat scandal. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz accidentally added Atlantic editor-in-chief and journalist Jeffrey Goldberg to a group chat discussing war plans to bomb targets in Yemen. That sounds like a bit of a problem. Waltz then went on Fox State TV's Laura Ingraham show to deny vehemently any knowledge of Goldberg, and he made a feeble attempt to tarnish Goldberg's reputation as a loser, which kind of seems irrelevant to me because Waltz invited the loser into the allegedly secure, highly sensitive, classified conversation. Now, all of this seemed to beg the question, as you'll see, methinks thou doth protest too much? ? Watch this.
I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is a bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone, and we're going to figure out how this happened.
So you don't, I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number
have
get
you ever
in the
had
chat?
have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number
I never
there?
make those mistakes.
Right? I'm sure everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone? I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets
someone
sucked
sent
in,
you that
it gets
contact.
sucked in.
That has never happened to me. I don't know what he's talking about. Sucked in? Like, who talks like that? Seriously, Mike, tone it down. But that is not a thing that happens. That is not a thing that happens. Like, if you send me your contact information, I don't then add you to another person's contact information because that would be stupid, which maybe that does answer the question because they are so stupid. That does not let them off the hook, though, because whether it's stupid or not, whether they knew what they were doing or not, they did it. And they need to be charged under the Espionage Act. Also, I think they should just be charged because they are stupid, and our country should not be at the mercy of such people. So, speaking of sucked in, that brings us to this week's segment, Take It or Leave It moment. White House Press Secretary, and again, I need to find more adjectives to describe this execrable, mendacious person. She explained to the American people what they really should be worried about concerning the Signal Group War Plans scandal, which I have to say does not roll trippingly off the tongue. Signal Group War Plans chat scandal. However, it is infinitely better than calling it Signalgate. We are orders of magnitude beyond anything that happened in Watergate. Like, Watergate right now is like the equivalent of jaywalking compared to everything that's going on right now. According to Leave It, what's happening is ultimately a matter of trust. Let's watch.
And this has been the most successful first 2 months of any administration ever, which is exactly why they are doing this. We are not going to bend in the face of this insincere outrage.
So, why aren't launch times on a mission strike classified?
Again, I would defer you to the Secretary of Defense's statement he put out this morning. There were various reasons he listed, things that were not included in that messaging thread that were not classified. And again, going back to the American public, do you trust the Secretary of Defense, who was nominated for this role, voted by the United States Senate into this role, who has served in combat, honorably served our nation in uniform? Or do you trust Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a registered Democrat and an anti-Trump sensationalist reporter?
Is that a trick question? I trust Jeffrey Goldberg, obviously, because you people are the least trustworthy people who've ever lived. And not only are you untrustworthy, you're vile, and you're un-American, you're anti-American, you're anti-democratic, and you're anti-constitutional. So I don't trust you farther than I can throw you. And I mean, that's assuming I can't throw you very far, but I don't know because I will never be in a position to throw you anywhere. Let's put it this way. I don't trust you at all. You don't deserve my trust. You don't deserve the trust of the American people because all you do all day long with our taxpayer dollars is lie to us. So basically, and I think this should be our traditional end to the take it or leave it segment, fuck off. Anyway, some of Donald's cronies won't even weigh in on the subject, and they seem very confused about when or if it actually happened. Take, for example, this guy.
I do want to ask you, do you have signal on your phone?
I'm not going. You guys beat that story to death. I'm just watching. I remember during the campaign.
Would you ever use Signal for government business?
I don't use Signal. Look. You beat that story to death on the campaign trail. I would ask you to rethink
this story
that because
wasn't
the
on the
American people don't care about that. Well, they do care about this story, and I'm glad you had me on today. I'm just delighted to be on. But no, I'm not going there. It's not my lane, not my job.
Oh, well, it's not his job. You know what is his job? He is the senior counselor for trade and manufacturing for the United States of America in the Trump regime, which is not working out very well for us. So I wish that weren't his job either. But the idea that he's blaming the silly media for beating this story like to death is just absurd. Also, I kind of wish that the media were taking this moment a little more seriously and we're really going after this guy, because what he is suggesting is that it is just so silly of the media to be making a big deal out of what was one of the greatest breaches of national security in American history, and that it involved people at the highest echelons in government, including the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and the Director of National Intelligence. It's kind of a big deal when you put it that way, because these people violated the Espionage Act. But, it's not his job to know such things. Which it sounds like it's nobody's job. Anyway, I wish it were somebody's job. You know what's very helpful, actually? There are more people out there to help share the burden of the mockery. In the House, Democratic Representative Jared Moskowitz from Florida did a little trolling of his own during a hearing on Tuesday when he held up a poster board filled with the same emojis that National Security Advisor Mike Waltz used in the leaked Signal chat group. Take a look at this.
It's always good, like when we have something that's bipartisan, to point it out, because it happens so little around here anymore. But rather than giving like a really big, long speech, I feel like I could just use this, and this will tell you that I think it's good, right? So like that's a fist, American flag, fire. So I'll just, from now on, when we do things where like we agree, I'll just hold this up rather than giving like a really big long speech. So job well done, guys.
Would the gentleman yield?
Sure, I'll yield.
But I'm not sure everybody recognizes the reference there. Would you explain where that comes from?
Yeah, so this is how when we're in like a chat with friends, right, where we're like having a casual chat about like where we're dropping missiles.
Are you talking about a public chat room?
Yeah, but like, and with friends, and we're just like, hamming about who we're gonna bomb.
Yeah, that's right. We just bombed a bunch of people. Cool. So we all know where Caroline Leavitt's trust lies. But another person on the group chat thread was Donald's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. By all reports, you'll never guess where he was. It is. I personally prefer to be in the city when I am planning war crimes with a bunch of my buddies on Signal. It's my favorite place to be when I'm doing such things. Yeah. He was in Moscow. Maybe he wasn't even at the Kremlin. Did he have his personal phone on him during the visit? It's hard to say because they're never going to tell us the truth. But of course, he's a serious man who takes security very seriously. And he knows who to trust and who not to trust. Right? I mean, of course he does. Right? Let's watch.
Now, I've been asked my opinion. So about what President Putin's motives are on a larger scale. And I simply have said that I just don't see that he wants to take all of Europe, this is a much different situation than it was in World War II. In World War II, there was no NATO. So you have countries that are armed there. To me, it just does. I take him at his word in this sense. So, and I think the Europeans are beginning to come to that belief too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Europeans are absolutely going to take Putin at his word, because it's not like he's a homicidal maniac who's committed massive war crimes against what was once our ally, Ukraine, and the Ukrainian people. Sure, listen. So what are a few war crimes between friends? I think we need to give Putin the benefit of the doubt. I think he deserves it almost as much as Donald does. These people, okay, what's the theme of today? They're very stupid. They're also, there's something seriously wrong with them. These people are like freaking sociopaths. So maybe that paints a bad picture of American diplomacy, but speaking of lines that should not be crossed, did you see? Okay, trigger warning, trigger warning. Look away if you must. Did you see the painting of Donald that they hung up at the Colorado State Capitol building? I want you to prepare yourselves. Well, actually, why should you prepare yourselves? We have to look at Donald all the time, so forget about it. Anyway, Donald has been having a bad week all around, and it actually started with a portrait he hates. Watch this.
President Trump is complaining about a portrait of himself hanging on a wall at the Colorado State Capitol building. He posted tonight on Truth Social, slamming the artist and Colorado's Democratic governor. He calls the painting purposely distorted and claims people in Colorado are calling and writing to complain about that portrait. He says the portrait was put up by Governor Polis, but here's the thing. The portrait was actually funded by the state's top Republican at the time.
Whether this portrait brings a smile or a scowl to your face, remember that you have the right to do so because this is the United States of America.
That's what former Senate President Kevin Grantham said at the portrait's unveiling in 2019. He crowdfunded the cost on GoFundMe. President Trump didn't actually have a portrait hanging in the Colorado Capitol for the first half of his term. In 2018, a prankster put up a portrait of Russian President Vladimir Putin before a tour guide removed it.
First of all, props to the reporter for the bolo tie. Nicely done. Okay. I don't know about you, but I thought that was actually a flattering portrait of Donald. But I think I understand the problem here. It didn't make him look like a superhero. In other words, it didn't make him look anything like he doesn't look. So for him, it was probably actually like looking at a mirror. Yikes. Okay. So priorities. I just think that imagine your life being so bereft of meaning that you think a good use of your time is writing into Colorado to complain about a portrait that actually looks like the guy portrayed. Or better yet, imagine your life is so bereft of meaning that you're the guy who's portrayed in the portrait and you spend hours obsessing about the fact that the portrait actually looks how you actually look in real life, although maybe a little better than you actually do look. That's kind of where we are. Like, that's what the whole American government is for, to prop up this idiot's ego. Oh, well. Again, Donald's time is very valuable. He has his priorities straight. Take, for instance, his concerns about the war in America's greatest enemy. Canada? Greenland? Panama? No, it's much worse. There's a never-ending struggle for the freedom. Again and again. Trigger warning. Hope you're sitting down. Wind power. This week, Donald's war against windmills continued. Windmills, I say. Windmills. Like, what is he? Pancho Sanchez? That's the wrong name. What is he? Don Quixote? Sorry. I screwed up my literary references. Is he Don Quixote? Is he tilting? I don't know. Did you know? Seriously? Because, yeah, he knows stuff. He knows more than the wind scientist. I'm sure there's a better name for them. Wind ruins landscapes. I thought it was like shapes them. But okay, it ruins landscapes and even the ocean. I don't know how that would work. If you don't believe me, I want you to watch this right now.
And we're opening up our coal mines again, and we're going to do, I call it beautiful, clean coal. The technology is so good now that coal can give you tremendous power. At the same time, it can be very clean. But we're also obviously doing oil and gas and various other things. You can do pretty much whatever you want. We don't like the wind because we think it ruins the landscapes, the plains, ruins them. And it's got a lot of problems. It's also by far the most expensive energy. It looks horrible in the oceans. It's dangerous in the oceans in terms of navigation. And if you look at what's happening with whales, in one area, they lost 2 whales, like in 20 years, washed ashore. And this year they had 17 wash ashore. So there's something happened out there. There's something driving the whales a little bit loco.
Well, yes, there's something driving something a little bit loco for sure. I don't think it's the wind. The wind is, I think I saw the problem. I have a really good source of clean energy. It's wind, you idiot. And honestly, like as somebody who used to sail a lot, I think wind does serve a purpose on the ocean. But what do I know? Except I needed it to fill my sails so I could go someplace. Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, that's what we're dealing with. And speaking of the vast open spaces, and I'm not exactly referring to the ones between his head. By now, you've probably heard that, it's hard to feel sorry for these people, but Usha and JD Vance's visit to the capital of Greenland was canceled. Why? Because nobody except the polar bears wanted to greet them. And to be fair to them, the polar bears had an ulterior motive. Danish TV 2's Jesper Steinmetz reported that locals completely cold-shouldered the Vance family in a way that only people who live in the Arctic could. And then American representatives were seen walking around the city canvassing residents' interest in a visit. Steinmetz said this: they've gotten no every single time. What would your answer be? Let's roll the clip.
US Vice President and his wife have cancelled a planned trip to Greenland's capital amid increasing fury within the territory. JD Vance is still expected to visit a US military base in the region, but ultimately scaled back the trip because no one in Greenland would greet him.
Greenlanders may be small in number, but they're standing mighty firm against a Goliath.
We don't want you here.
Donald Trump's plans to take over the Danish territory is deeply unpopular with those who live there.
We are not for sale. You are not for sale in your country.
A planned visit to the capital by Vice President JD Vance and his wife has been called off, reportedly because not a single person wanted to greet them, including the director of this art museum, who declined an invitation to host the couple.
The request was within the opening hours of the institution, so we couldn't close the institution down for a visit.
Because we didn't want to, because you suck. You're trying to steal our country from us. Oh my goodness gracious. Like the fact that I feel terrible. I'm very proud of Greenland for having stood for standing together. Wish this country could figure out how to do that. So that's awesome. And seriously, every single person in Greenland was protesting this, and it was great. Again, the polar bears are a little hungry, but it's all right. Maybe next time. Okay, so we know that Donald's tariffs, his new tariffs, 25% tariffs on cars, which is brilliant, that's going to drive up the price of cars. But there's another phenomenon that is somehow lowering the price of cars. I'm wondering if you can figure out what it is. You probably can, but watch this.
Fishing line. Soft cloth, like it was never there.
Each T removed off a Tesla feels like a silent protest for Jordan Schwartz.
It's symbolic, but I think symbols matter. It's tearing down a flag. It's raising a flag.
With a heat gun, screw gun, and fishing line, he removed his Tesla logos and has now done it for several other people too.
It gives me great pleasure and satisfaction.
According to the market tracking site Car Gurus, Tesla now has the most common electric vehicles on the used car market. The majority of the used Teslas are selling for around $30,000. Just 3 years ago, the average cost of the used car was $70,000.
They want to hurt Tesla because we're stopping this terrible waste and corruption.
Schwartz sees removing the T's on his trunk as his role in fighting back.
Another trend that maybe you've seen on the road or online, some drivers are removing the Tesla emblem and then putting the logo of another car manufacturer on there instead.
Well, that's not going to work because Toyota would never make a truck like that. No other car company would make a truck that looked like that. But I mean, I think we can credit Elon Musk with being innovative because he's creating a whole new industry, which is erasing the fact that Tesla exists. And he says that, people are trying to tear down Tesla. No, we're trying to tear you down, you idiot. Anyway, let's close this week with former Lieutenant Colonel in the Air National Guard and U.S. Representative from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger, who, after his security clearance was revoked, had a few choice words for Donald. Take a look.
So I just found out that Donald Trump revoked my security clearance. Here's the funny thing. Dude, I retired a year ago from the military. I don't even have a security clearance. Dumbass. I'm sorry I'm living rent-free in your head, Donald, but you got this one wrong.
Well, who can keep track, right? Donald doesn't know anything about security clearances. He actually thinks that he can declassify stuff in his little head. So, he just thinks that if he says it, people will believe it and he'll seem like a tough guy, but he's not. I'm going to quote Adam Kinzinger. He's a dumbass, among other things. All right, that does it for us this week. Thank you so much for being here for this episode of Trump Trolls Trump. We love doing this, and we hope you enjoyed as well. We'll be back next Saturday with another episode. In the meantime, everybody, please stay safe and be kind and mock them relentlessly.